I don't know that he has one. Okay. It being the appointed hour, I hereby call to order the regular meeting of the Ojai Planning Commission for Wednesday, September 20th, 2023. Who's in back, Sherry?
Yes.
Sherry, would you call the roll, please?
Chair Quilisi,
Here?
Vice Chair Trent,
Here.
Commissioner Bennett,
Here.
Commissioner Murphy.
Here.
All right. Commissioner Murphy, if you'd lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Lucas, any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
Okay, very good. Next on the agenda then is public communications, the time set aside for people to speak to the Planning Commission about items of city business that are not on the agenda. And I have one card. Mr. Espinoza, please come forward. To the
Buenas
podium.
tardes.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Erasmo Espinosa. I'm an artist. The other day I went in Montgomery with the station glasses there, and I was talking with a policeman. We was talking about a beautiful city and too clean. So I told him, well, not very well, look. So I showed him, can I?
You have photographs of your,
Quality, utility
oh,
boxes.
okay.
How they look ugly with a kind of a graffiti, see? So I told him then I can,
You have to go back to
I can,
to speak into the mic.
put, well, I can do
Oh, yeah.
something like this. It's another box, no?
This is from some other city, of course.
Yeah, you know, it's not, I painted that one in Oakland, it's another box,
Ah,
this size.
okay.
So, when I told him, he said, oh, it's beautiful thing, and.
Yeah.
You
You really
have
need
to
to be
talk to the
speaking
mic.
at the podium, or we can't catch a recording of what you have to say, sir.
So he asked me, you can go here Wednesday here and talk about it. Maybe somebody can help you because I want to paint that kind of boxes, utility boxes. See?
And these are all utility boxes that you have painted on
No, I
behalf
have been
of...
painting too many murals. But when we talk about the boxes, then I saw there. So I say, when I can paint it, if everything is clean around there, only the ugly thing is that one.
Okay, well, these are obviously all very attractive.
Very cool.
Are you volunteering to repaint the utility boxes here in Ojai, or are you looking
well,
for sponsorship to do that, or?
No, some people, they support them, but I don't know, here. In Oxnard, the business people around there, they put the money for artist people to make works, you know, like mine.
Okay,
And I don't know here, I asked Mr. Carl Alameda, how can we do that? He said, well, he don't know. He need to talk and ask maybe to the Ventura County, because over there, too many utility boxes, they are painted already, you know, it's not San Luis Obispo.
we do have some painted boxes here now, I believe.
Oh yeah, in the park, the little ones I saw.
Okay, I thought there was one on Montgomery as well. But Lucas, is this something that the Art Commission handles? Or,
It's
I don't think
it's
paint on
even-
utility boxes is really part of land use and zoning.
right. It's actually more of an SCE or Southern California Edison piece, and they have their own.
Okay, thanks, Sherry.
They have their own process and application process. The assistant city manager has been looking into it. So at this point, I can
Okay.
take down your information and we can reach out to you separately,
Yeah.
independently.
Yeah,
of
if
this.
you'll leave contact information with Lucas, his name is Alvarado, right?
Oh, Carl, yes.
Carl Alvarado, yeah,
Yep.
okay. So he's gonna look into
He's already looking into it.
a process for beautifying our utility boxes,
Right.
let's
Because
say.
we already have some that have been painted, so.
Okay. So the city will contact you if Lucas knows how to get in touch with you.
Oh, perfect. I would like to paint.
Thank
that
you.
kind of boxes. Mhm.
You want your pictures back too, I presume?
Yeah, yeah, grab those. Those are very nice, beautiful.
All right, thank you, sir.
So at the end of this meeting, can you get me your email or your phone?
Here, put it on the card. Okay. Is there anyone else here present who wishes to speak during public communications on an item not on the agenda? Sherry, do we have anyone waiting in the ether out there for that?
No.
All right. Well, let's move on then to the consent item on the agenda, the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning Commission 2 weeks back, September 6th. Does anyone have any refinements to this,
No,
to these
no
minutes?
refinements.
Nope.
I had just one, where under roll call, it says Commissioner Bennett arrived after the roll call. He actually arrived after the consent items vote. Because if you look a little farther down on the page, he's shown as absent at the consent item vote.
Caught.
Busted.
Just trying to make it accurate. And you were here for the cases that we had to discuss, which is the important part. All right. If there are no other corrections, a motion to approve these minutes as amended.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? All right, Sherry, let's call the roll on item 1 as amended.
Quillisi,
Yes?
Trent,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Terrific. Move on to item 2. The appeal of a director determination. Lucas, you want to take us through that, please?
Yeah, and actually I've got a prepared speech just for this, so we can give some history and context to this, because it really has been almost a
Oh,
year
I'm sorry.
since
I-
this started.
A mistake of mine was just pointed out.
A grammatical
Not-
piece to
we
the
did not
previous item?
mention disclosure of site visits and ex parte.
Ah, yes, process.
I have visited the site. I have had no ex parte contacts.
Same for me.
Same for me.
Same for me.
Terrific. Now let's move on to item 2.
Process and procedures, I love it. Okay, so the item before us tonight is an appeal of a director determination regarding a denial to a request for an exemption to section 9-1.1006 of the Ojai Municipal Code, which requires new construction in low-rise residential and non-residential buildings to be all electric. The property in question is 401 East Topa Street, and this is currently a vacant property that is slated for a new single-family residence and ADU. To recap, the exemption request was denied in October of 2022. At that time, my determination as the community development director was then appealed 6 days later. The appeal has been heard before the Planning Commission at 2 separate meetings and continued at both of those meetings to provide the applicant or appellant in this case the opportunity to further refine his argument and to address an ADU or a junior ADU discrepancy that happened in June. At first blush, the appellant has claimed the requirement would present a hardship as defined by section 9-1.1009, subset B of the Ojai Municipal Code, which states that if an applicant or appellant believes the circumstances exist that make it a hardship or infeasible to meet the requirements of the article, they can request an exemption. And in applying for an exemption, the burden lies with either the applicant, or in this case, the appellant, to provide proof of hardship or infeasibility. The applicant's initial evidence of this hardship was presented in a form of a solar evaluation from California Solar Electric, which provided the applicant an evaluation that illustrated that the effective annual solar access for this property would be less than 70% or greater of the output of an unshaded photovoltaic array on an annual basis. This meant that the applicant was not required to install solar, as the effective solar access would be less than 80% continuous square footage, or square feet in this case, which according to state law is grounds for an exemption for solar. Staff denied this exemption request based on this evidence because though the state no longer requires the applicant to install solar, that does not mean the applicant is prohibited from installing solar. Thus, the applicant would still be more than capable to gain valuable cost savings in the long run in utilizing a solar installation for the property. As a result, this item was initially presented to this body, to this commission, on November 16th of 2022, in which the appellant presented evidence of the hardship, the aforementioned solar evaluation from California Solar Electric, which the director myself continuing to recommend denial based on that evidence. This body came to the conclusion to continue this item in order to allow the appellant the option to conduct further research to provide evidence to further support his claims. You could call it another bite at the apple. That this requirement entailed a hardship or infeasibility. Now, the Community Development Department worked with the appellant to obtain the information regarding the hardship. And what I mean by work, I mean the information was provided and we made sure that the information was apples to apples, or at least close to that, in terms of electric appliances versus all gas appliances. The evidence presented by the applicant, or the appellant in this case, does not support a hardship, as analyzed by staff. Additionally, the Community Development Director, myself, inquired with the city's building inspector recently to analyze the applicant's hardship claim through the aforementioned cost comparison charts. That's provided in attachment E of this report. To summarize the building inspector's position, the crux of costs depend on installation specifications of the manufacturers for the water heater. In particular, some models require to be installed indoors, some models are required to be installed outdoors, and depending on where they're installed would also entail if they need additional building permits for things such as venting or separate mechanical rooms. In review of the proposed appliances from the cost comparison chart, the building inspector has, in almost every case, found suitable and effective cheaper options that would suffice and not be cost prohibitive, gas versus electric. Models that the inspector traced back even to local stores, like the Ace Hardware store in Miners Oaks. Now, therefore, as a result of the solar evaluation, not precluding the applicant from using solar and suitable cost-effective electric appliances available to the applicant, or appellant in this case, it remains staff's position to recommend denial for this exemption hardship request. The denial resolution as a draft is provided to the commission as attachment A. If you have any questions, I can certainly answer them.
Questions? Not yet. This part is for the commissioners to ask questions of staff. Then we'll hear from you, sir.
There's been public comment that was provided in the previous meeting. That was actually provided as an attachment to this staff report. And then we received public communication as well this afternoon.
So I have a quick question. So subsection 9-1.1009B mentions that the hardship is pursuant to the owner being able to live in, rent, or sell the home at a reasonable rate of return. Is that correct? That's correct. Okay, cool. But the code doesn't define what a reasonable rate of return is, correct?
It does not.
It's not. Okay.
Yeah.
So the reasonable rate of return in reference for this particular case, is it for the owner? Is it for the renter? Is it
The rate of return would be for the owner.
for the owner? Okay, so the rate of return that he might potentially gain from the renters
The return on the investment of having
or
built the
selling
unit.
the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that has to be a reasonable rate of return.
Yeah, rent or sell, yes.
Yeah, whatever that definition is. Okay. So another question. On attachment E, page 1 of 18, I think it was a letter. I think it was the first letter from April 9th.
Page 1 of 18?
Yeah, page
Okay.
1 of 18, attachment E.
Mm-hmm.
So the applicant mentions that the code in section 9-1-005 in the ordinance, all electric building, is, and basically this is a definition, I believe, is what we're calling all electric building in that section of the code, is a building where electricity, and I think this is where there might be a mistake. It says in the building where electricity, comma, including solar, is the only permanent source of energy. And in the letter, there's no comma in here. It just basically says the building where electricity, including solar, provides electricity is the only permanent source of energy. I think that's a mistake, right?
Yeah,
solar
because
doesn't
you
have to
wouldn't,
be the
you wouldn't be
only
off the grid at that point. You would be using both, right?
Right, so-
Or have the option for both.
So when we're defining all electric building in this section of the code, we're not saying that it has to be all solar, correct?
Absolutely not.
No,
Right.
Okay,
just all electric, yeah.
got it, okay. Okay, and then another question, sorry, these are just clarity for me.
No, that's great.
According to the criteria in 9-9.91009, that's the exception piece. The applicant can apply for an exception if they meet certain conditions that are outlined in page 6 through 7. And the applicant in this case is applying for an exception, correct? And the exception is the first part of the exception, first part of the definitions of the exception, which is hardship.
Correct.
Cool, all right, that's it. All right, that's all I had.
Jamie, questions for staff?
Not for staff, no.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? I take it back. I had one more question. I apologize. So the applicant's applying for a single dwelling family unit and also an ADU. Do we know how big the residence and the ADU will be?
We had them in the original,
Yeah, it actually came before this body in 2021, I think at the very end. So it's a 2-story, single-family residence, and then it's a detached ADU.
it's right here on.
Yeah,
The house or the ADU?
ADU.
The house is 2-story with, it used to have a JADU over the garage, now
Right.
it's storage, and then the ADU in the front yard.
Okay, so 900 square feet, and then the 2-story house is about how much?
The house is about 1,800.
18,
And
okay.
then with what do we call it? Accessory dwelling unit. I said accessory.
ADU.
Upstairs is,
Can't hear anything.
FYI, it's not a
unit,
unit, but yeah, let's keep questions here and then, okay.
We'll do this and then that.
Thank you, appreciate it. That was it.
You done?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I'm looking back at the April 9th letter from Mr. Chase, the appellant to Lucas. It says, what you're applying for is a hardship for renters. It says, reasonable rate of return has nothing to do with my initial request for hardship. Okay, so we'll get to discussing that. Is that your understanding? Is that is still the condition of the appeal? That we're talking about an economic hardship, but it's for renters, not for the parcel owner?
Renters is my understanding, yes.
Renters and,
Renters is my understanding as well, yes.
yeah, okay.
The first, remember, this is kind of in 2 phases. The first phase was back in November, where it was the solar piece, and then the second phase is the financial piece, right? So it's two bites at the apple, essentially, is what we're looking at here.
Right, okay.
Well, I would have thought the term rate of return means return on the equity that's been invested.
On the investment in the structures, yes.
Yeah, not, there is no return to the renter.
renter.
Yeah.
No, it's to the parcel owner, yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's all the questions for staff?
Yes.
All right, then let's hear from the appellant. Please come forward, sir.
Hopefully, the third time getting a little better. Before I forget, I don't know why you say reasonable rate of return. That doesn't have anything to do with what I'm,
That's what I was pointing out. Your
Oh,
letter
oh.
says reasonable rate of return has nothing to do with your appeal.
with my appeal, yeah.
So when we get to it.
That's just one of the
yeah.
things they can consider for something else,
So
yeah.
let's
So-
start by you telling us what you want to tell us, and then we'll have
Okay,
potentially
so first of all, I want to
questions for
thank you guys for, extensions and working with me. I think everybody's been good and everything like that, and everybody's been nice. Sherry, Lucas, you've even been pretty nice, but. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to
Say
point
no
out, the
part.
first thing I wanted to point out is, all electric houses is not cost-effective if you don't have solar, and there's really no argument about that. I know this letter that this guy wrote, he has nothing, doesn't know my case. He doesn't know what, that I don't have solar and it doesn't pay for the electricity. It's a state law that REACH codes have to be cost-effective in order to be passed. And so they have to present to the city council that REACH codes can be cost-effective, and the way they did that is because they made every new home required to have solar. So they're all, okay, so we got it now. That you can be cost-effective, so we could pass a REACH code, and so that's what they did. But they did, and then so, they argued in city council and stuff, and then they came up with exemptions for things that people didn't think about. Now, I think it's perfectly logical that if you don't have solar, that qualifies for one of the exemptions. That if you don't have solar to offset the cost over time for the electricity, then I think that that's one of the, that could be qualified as an exemption. And then subjectiveness. This is completely subjective. We're not following city council, ruling or anything. It's all independent thinkers. We all can make up our own mind. We don't have to worry about what city council thinks.
We do have to worry about what's in the code.
What's in the code, yeah.
Right.
Well, what's in the code is a hardship or, and the REACH code is in the code. So, subjectiveness, so we don't have to think about that. So, and then it is definitely more expensive to go with electric than it is to go with gas. It's gonna be about $161 per unit more for each unit to pay for electric. Staff has already vetted that. That's correct. It's gonna cost $8,000 more to buy the appliances. I've kind of taken out one unit. Now this is only for 2 units. So it's not cost effective if you don't have solar. And this is something that's gonna be with this house forever. And it's not, I won't have the infrastructure, let's say in a couple years, they say, okay, you can have gas. I won't have the infrastructure to bring gas in, and I really want gas. Also, not only is it a hardship, but I really want gas. I might move into this house someday, and I know the pros and cons on gas. I know everything about it all, about what people are saying about gas, what people are saying about electric, and I know the future is going electric, but in this case, I propose to make, if I was allowed to have a gas meter, all my 2 water heaters would be super high efficient water heaters, 98% gas, instant hot water heaters on the outside. I would do all electric heating, because that's pretty good stuff. They come out with that, all electric heating. I would do probably a gas dryer, because that's very cost effective right there. Just a gas dryer is a lot more expensive to run than an electric dryer.
I'm sorry, a gas dryer is a lot more
No,
expensive.
no, electric, I'm sorry, electric dryer
Okay.
is a lot more expensive to run than a gas dryer. And, you know, I just think, I think, I guess that's pretty much it. It's pretty much easy, my case. What I'm saying is that state law says reach codes must be cost effective. And that is that doesn't mean, a break even would be a cost effective. A little bit more would not be cost effective. So I have an exemption. I want gas. I mean, if you guys would just, I mean, think about that. You can make any decision you want. I mean, you don't have to be worried about what the planning commission says, because there's an exemption in the code. I mean, there is exemption in the code for things that might come up like this. So, I mean,
So, just a quick question, I apologize, I'm just trying to get some clarity.
no, that's fine. I like questions.
So, so you're basically, so I think there's two parts here. One part is that the REACH code doesn't conflict with state law. In order for us to have this REACH code, which we already have, but it can't conflict with state law. And then you're saying state law says it has to be cost effective?
Yes.
So you're saying that there's a conflict with this ordinance, that this ordinance should not be in place?
What I'm saying right here, there's 4 things that a city must do in order to pass a REACH code.
But it's already passed.
No, I know, but just because they pass a no drunk driving law doesn't mean you can start drinking right after the law's passed. You know what I mean? This is, so they have to demonstrate how they're gonna make it cost effective. So back in my very first meeting here, when I came here and we saw the snippets on thing about the city council meeting, about Amy Ryder, she was the one that said solar was the one that makes the difference.
Yeah.
Over time, it makes a difference. It doesn't pay for itself right away, but over time, the solar will make up the difference.
Right, okay, so,
Yeah.
so we got that. So it's a cost-effective piece. So I guess another question is, you're gonna be renting this out, right, to renters? And are you gonna be renting it at market rate?
Well, yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's gonna cost me market rate to build this thing.
Right,
Very expensive.
okay, and would you?
Everything's expensive now.
And obviously, utilities are a cost. Are you gonna pass along those utility costs to your renter?
No, if I mean, as soon as I leave this room, it's over. I mean, it's gonna be standard, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna say that, you don't have to pay, a higher, or let's say, more money per month because,
Well, like
you
if
don't
you
have
charge,
gas.
but you'd like, in the rental agreement that you
Yeah.
have, are utilities covered, or are you going to?
Oh, no,
charge
they
them?
pay the utilities.
They'll pay the.
I pay the
utilities.
water.
They'll pay the water.
Yeah, because I'm gonna have separate everything.
Right.
And I know maybe what you're getting at is why am I concerned about that? I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the raising cost of everything in Ojai. And, $161 a month may not sound like a lot of money, but it is a lot of money to some people. And these aren't gonna be super expensive homes, 900 square feet and a 1,650 square foot home.
Right.
This is not like some big house up in wherever
Right.
around here, in Arbolada or Branch Matilha or something.
Totally get it.
These are gonna be small places in Ojai, and like I said,
But
I'd like to propose like a hybrid thing, just, all I wanna do is run my heater, just the important things, the water heaters, and the gas dryers.
Right. So, and just going back, because we got to stick to what's in the code and what the ordinance says. And we
Yeah.
have to kind of abide by that. So, what we're trying to qualify for here is a hardship. And the hardship has to be based on a reasonable rate of return for you.
There's another one in the box.
So if this is going to be, cost is going to be passed along to the renters, then that piece doesn't really apply. Does that make sense?
That hardship is on the renters, not on the construct.
Unless I
model.
move into it.
Yeah,
Yeah, unless
it
you
would
move
be,
into it.
Yeah, and it's possible anything could happen in a year and a half, and I could move into it, and it's gonna cost $8,000 upfront cost, and these electric hybrid electric heat pumps, which, the piece that Lucas spoke about you can go out anywhere and buy a water heater is this not, that's not correct. It's mandated by Title 24, and this is a new thing that's coming out, these heat pump water heaters. They're very temperamental. They have to be replaced more often. They do work well. I mean, they work well because they have a coil inside of them. So as soon as the weather gets a little bit cold in the wintertime here, and there's not enough hot air to heat the water, it's kind of like a reverse thing, then the two 30-amp coils kick in and act just like a regular water heater, which is very, very expensive. And I think the price of electricity is going to go up. I really do. I think it's going to go up. I don't know for sure, but I'm just saying, who knows what's going to be the price of electricity? In the
Gas could go up too.
gas could go up too. Yeah, it's already kind of, gas tank's going up. Gas is going up, but not house gas isn't.
Natural gas.
Natural gas isn't.
We did
going
have a spike and it did come down, but.
Yeah, it had a spike and came down and stuff like that, but I don't know what to say. I really want gas. I'm a masonry contractor. I grew up with gas. I understand that it's the way out, but I'm 64 years old, and gas is my favorite commodity. Really, it's beautiful, man. And that's not the argument. The argument is cost effectiveness, and I have an exemption, whether you guys are willing to honor it or not. I've asked Lucas several times to explain to me why he is denying it. He's explained one reason. He says it's not good enough. And I said, what's not good enough? And he says, well, it's the money. And I said, well, I go, you don't think? He goes, no, it's not enough. So he thinks I have an exemption, but it's not enough to cover what he, in his mind, thinks is enough for an exemption. That's the only thing I could think of. He hasn't really given me a straight up answer. Every time I've asked him, I'm not going through this again. So Lucas is a good guy, I really think, but he's stuck on trying to deny this. And he wants to win this thing, and I don't know why. I wasn't going to bring this up. I mean, I don't know why. I have an exemption. He could have just said, yeah, you can't have solar? Yeah, it sounds good to me. He could have said that in 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, I think he's got to stick with what's in the code. And that's where.
But what part of the code are you talking about?
Well, you called out two pieces. One is basically that in order for the thing to pass, it's got to be, applicable to state law. And you're saying that state law says that it's got to be cost effective.
Yeah.
But the ordinance is passed, but you're saying the ordinance violates state law.
Yes. No, to me, in my situation, because I'm not cost effective. And I proved it, and staff has vetted it.
Yeah.
That's why we went through all that. And that's why you guys asked me the questions last time, apples to apples, on everything. I've answered everything. And you, and Mr. Bennett, you asked me to get someone to represent me, because obviously I'm not a very good speaker, and I'm not a very good reader. But that adds another cost. Am I going to pay someone $5,000 or $20,000 come in here and make my case? That adds way more. That's more of I'm trying to build this house with not, trying to keep the cost to a minimum. Am I going to argue, get attorneys and everything to try to represent me? I'm sure they would have done a better job. But I got to go with my gut. And this isn't going to hurt anybody. This is not going to hurt anybody.
Well, I get it, but the thing is we have to stick with what we have here in our code. because if we just make exceptions for everybody, then there's no reason to have code.
That, I know.
So.
Well, my exception is I don't have solar to offset the cost. And that is a big one. That is a big one.
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to understand is, yes, there's cost to install, and then there's monthly cost. You mentioned that the monthly cost is gonna be the burden of the renter. So then it's the install cost that you're looking at. And I'm still trying to understand where that fits into the exception. If that's a hardship on you, is that a hardship on the renter? Where does that fall into the reasonable rate of return?
Well, I mean, does it make a difference? I mean, are you not concerned about renters? Are you not concerned about what they need to pay?
I'm just concerned of what the exemptions outline in the code.
Well, the exemptions, it's solely up to what you think. It's not what's in the code, because this is subjective. Do you understand? This is a subjective matter. If you think that what I'm saying makes sense and makes sense, you can say yes, because it's purely subjective. You could ask Lucas. It doesn't have anything to do with cost effectiveness or reasonable rate of return, or, you know, Mr. Starkweather. Thanks, Mr. Starkweather. He's not here, but thank him for bringing up the AJDU thing last time. That was helpful. That was really helpful. And but it's subjective. It's what you think. It's not what you have to stick by with the code. It's not what the city council thinks. It's not what Lucas thinks. Lucas has already given you his opinion. Hasn't really expressed why so much. He just says it, in his eyes it doesn't meet it, you know. So meet the burden of proof. But I think I have a pretty good argument. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like if you're four individual thinkers, and all you're doing is kind of seeing what's in my eye, and do I have a little spark of hope? I would think one of you guys would have to say yes. At least 1 out of 4, you know? If you all say no, then I know it's all talked about and thought about beforehand. You know, I'm sure you guys love your gas stoves and everything like that, but that's not, like I say, that's not the point. The point is cost effectiveness is against state law. It needs to be cost effective in order to be state law. I mean, in order to be, the REACH code must be cost effective in order to be effective. And if it's not, and you have a good argument, then we'll listen to it. And I have a good argument, but I don't know if you guys are there. I kind of get the feeling that you're not, you know, and any more questions?
There may be.
Yeah.
I note that you have not mentioned anything about cooking, the use of electricity versus gas in either baking or stovetop
Yeah.
uses. Why is that?
I haven't mentioned that. I should. I love stoves. I love a gas stove. I have a beautiful Wolf stove at my house. And I love it. I've grown up with it all my life. 99.
Growing up with it, I don't think is listed anywhere.
I know, but come on. Who doesn't like a gas stove? Honestly, who does not like a gas stove? Okay, a rental, you have this glass top. People are throwing their pans on there, cooking, you know, hot grease, and the tops get all scratched up for conduction. That's if you buy a good one, it's energy efficient. And here again, I'm not saying why electric's better or gas is better. We all know what that is. But I'm just saying, so an induction cooktop, which is supposed to be a little bit more cost effective, they have a glass stove and they're very fragile. So you put a pan on them and stuff, they start scratching. In a rental, you know, and they're expensive. So then if you buy those little round coil things that aren't so expensive, that everybody can use, and they heat up really fast and they get real red, those are good, but they're really not cost effective, you know what I mean? They burn a lot of electricity, those things. And but to your point, yes, I love gas stove. I like cooking on gas. I don't know anybody that doesn't. I mean, some people don't mind it, though. I know some people don't mind it. But it's personal preference, I guess. Personally, I like it. It's not why I'm trying to get a gas meter. I'm trying to get a gas meter to run my water heaters and my gas dryer, my fireplace. I don't think I'm going to do a fireplace anymore, you know, if I can't have gas. And in that letter that you gave me, it said that I could put, the code says I could put a propane tank outside. Is that true? So I can do this whole house gas and just have a propane tank out there? Does that make sense?
Propane instead of natural gas is legal under the REACH code?
For outside, yeah.
What do you mean for outside? But not
Tank for outside, but you could plumb the whole inside for propane lines?
You could. It just can't be, it cannot be hooked up to natural gas, period.
Okay. Just clarifying with staff what that means.
Yeah, I didn't know. Well, what's the difference? I mean, propane is just as toxic as regular gas, by far.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make that part.
I'm
Doesn't make
not,
sense.
I don't think I'm here to debate whether or not propane
Yeah.
is better
Yeah.
than natural gas here.
Yeah. Okay, but all right. So I didn't know that, but I know propane is very expensive. I looked into it. Propane company says it's like twice as much than regular natural gas. And I've thought of it, but I don't want to, you know. First of all, I don't think I even have room for a propane tank anymore. It's pretty tight.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. I think I sure would appreciate it if you guys gave me my meter. And I'm like, I'm on the you know, the under the old code that got passed.
That's true.
And
Your appeal is under the previous version of the code.
Yes.
Which allows for certain exemptions and exceptions, yes.
yes, and
That's the code we're working on for this case, not the one that says no exceptions.
right.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking that I have a chance, you know, here.
Jamie, did you,
I've got no further
Other
questions of
questions?
the app.
Judy?
Let me just clarify to make sure I understood that last piece. The clean reach code is not applicable here. We're working under the old the original reach code.
Yes.
Yes.
That's where the law was when the case was filed.
Regarding that specific request for the
Yeah,
exemption.
and the law.
Hold on.
Okay,
There's a
sorry.
laundry list of exemptions. Mr. Scott Chessé has gone after one specific. And that's the one that we're reviewing. It's the one that's come before this body twice before. So.
Okay.
Okay? Oh, all right. I want to explore just a little bit with you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You said in your April letter that you're not raising an objection or appealing a decision based on reasonable rate of return. That's what it says in your letter.
Yeah, I didn't understand it, I'm sorry. I know I wrote the letter, but
Well, okay.
I didn't understand what you said.
Says,
Oh, yeah, you're right.
yeah, I
Yeah,
only put
got it.
I only put this in my letter to you because I felt it was a hardship for renters to have to pay more for their utility bills due to all electric. Reasonable rate of return has nothing to do with my initial request for hardship cost effective.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because when I looked at the attachment here, and I sent this to Lucas and he confirmed, your charts that you have given us with acquisition and operation numbers, it looks like it's unchanged from what we saw in April, except that you have deleted the acquisition and operating costs for a unit in the junior ADU, correct?
Yes.
Otherwise,
I
it's-
haven't updated those numbers, yeah, but I have my updated numbers here.
We have more numbers?
No, I just have the updated number, I've already said it, $161 a month.
Right, yeah, okay. I kind of eyeballed it, and I thought it was 150 to 175, somewhere
Yeah,
in there.
yeah, 175.
Per month, higher electric bill than electric plus gas bill for the house and for the ADU.
Yes,
okay.
per month, each unit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And based on your numbers, the acquisition cost between gas and electric is about $2,500. You just said a different number, and I'm not sure where it came from.
No,
The not hump, heat pump,
Heat
water
pumps,
heater
yeah.
enclosures,
Yeah,
the city building officials said they were not required.
they are. No,
So you're saying the city
the whole thing that,
official is wrong?
Like I said, the whole thing that Lucas read about what the building inspector said is false.
I disagree.
That not one word
100%.
of that is true, and I can prove
disagree.
every single word.
I disagree 100%.
Okay, we disagree, but that's fine. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so, but these heat pump water heaters need to be in an enclosed area. Like the outside water heaters, the instant hots, they don't need to be outside. They can be on the side of the house. Maybe some of you guys
Mine.
have one. Yeah, but an electric water heater needs to be in an enclosed cabinet outside. It can be in the garage, but it can't be out in the open in the elements. Even a regular water heater, a coil one, they say you can't put them outside either.
Gas water heater has to have an enclosure.
An electric water heater has to have an enclosure. Gas water heater recommended to have an enclosure. They don't.
I
do
disagree
two.
with that statement. That statement is not correct.
Okay, so like, what's not correct about it?
The opposite of what you just said is true.
Well, then I must have misspoke. Let me speak again. An electric water heater cannot be outside by itself. They need to be in an enclosed
That's incorrect.
cabinet.
And the information that I got from the building official and the building inspector,
That makes sense.
that statement is incorrect.
Yeah, electric, you could put inside, outside, doesn't matter. You put it in a closet, it'd be fine. Put it
What?
under a bed.
And there's a lot of difference between a heat pump water heater and a regular water heater. They require venting and, anyway, that's easily provable. Easily provable that you cannot put a electric water heater outside, just in the outside element without having an enclosure. So if I put a heat pump.
What's the, you say it's easily provable, what's the proof?
The proof is by the manufacturer's recommendations.
But you're
They say
saying,
they need to be in an enclosed area. Now, when they said that, Lucas interpreted it as having to be inside the house, inside thing, in the garage or inside the house. And I just flipped out. I couldn't believe it because it says in the you can Google it right now, manufacturer's recommendation on heat pump water heaters. They said that they had to be indoors, but then they're telling me that I can't put an enclosure outside. Therefore, they're not allowing that expense, that $5,500 expense I have in there. But I promise you, as everybody of my witness, if you put a heat pump, which mandated in my Title 24 for going all electric, if you put a heat pump water heater outside, it has to be in a protected area, and it has to have the proper ventilation. It's not just a small little windows on the top of the door in the back. It has to be properly ventilated, with lots of ventilation that comes in. But they have to keep the elements. You can understand that, right? Electricity outside does not work in the rain. I mean, a gas water heater, that they do okay, but they're not real good. So, you know, I don't even know if it's a code that they have to be in it anymore. But I remember many years ago, there used to be gas water heaters outside all the time, and you know, people start putting them in those little aluminum enclosed areas. We can't do that to a heat pump water heater because they're too small for one, and you know, I'm not doing aluminum water heaters. It would be a full-on. That's a full-on thing. It's at least $5,500, and I have to do that once. Before I was thinking I had to do it for the JADU upstairs, but that's out now, so it's only one. So it's only the 5,500. So the difference is, you said 2,500. The difference is 8,000. So
500 and 2,500 is 8,000.
yeah,
5,500 for one
yeah. So that makes
enclosure,
sense, right? Yeah,
plus the 25 for the appliances.
yeah, yeah. That's
Okay.
yeah. That's it. And then you know, it's also the monthly. And and you know, I get your point about me not having to pay the electric bill right now. That's my intent. But I just think that like I wrote in the letter that I'm concerned about, you know, the renters having to pay it. And someday if I ever move in, then I have to do it. Then I'll have to pay it.
Okay, well, as I read the data that we have here, it looks to me like, and I think everybody agrees, the operating cost of all electric for each of the house and the ADU is a little over $150 a month difference. You said 161, I kind of ballparked it in there. And then
That's each one, right? Each unit.
each unit.
300, your number's 300.
$322.
Yeah.
By your numbers, okay.
Yeah.
And then the actual cost of building the two units, if you only have one enclosure.
Yeah,
I don't know how you do that. But
yeah.
that says then that the
I can
building cost is about $8,000 more for all electric than
it's-
it is for gas plus electric.
Yeah, so it's
But-
not
But if
cost-
you had gas water heaters, wouldn't you have to have enclosures and
No, I do
venting
it
around
at
them?
tankless, because the tankless are
Oh, the tankless ones,
They're
okay, got
really efficient now. They use
Got it,
very little
yeah.
gas, they're super efficient, 98%, they're letting off barely any methane or whatever the heck you call it, you know?
I'm familiar with them. I have two at my house.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we're talking about somewhere between $2,500 and $8,000 in building costs, and then roughly $160 a month in operating costs for each unit. And the question is, whether you look at the code or you look at the state law that we're supposed to comply with the code, you have phrases like reasonable rate of return, and you have phrases like cost effectiveness. And what troubles me is those are very squishy terms. It's all kind of like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And this body needs to decide what, because we don't know what the rate of return is, and frankly, what your rate of return is, I don't think is any of our business.
Well-
You're contending it's not reasonable, and we have to decide, not having any numbers, whether it's reasonable or not, and whether or not the increased building cost and the increased operating cost is an economic hardship on someone.
and,
I think that's the question
Chair
that we
Colosi.
have before us.
Chair
And
Closely. I think we're going
cost-effectiveness.
into debate at this point, or internal, as opposed to deliberation,
maybe we
as
are.
opposed to Q&A at this
That's-
point.
that's-
And we still
yes.
have, I think, some
And I
public comment as well.
apologize for having jumped ahead there. I'm trying to clarify
and also,
with the appellant what the objection is, and it sounds like it's an economic hardship.
yes,
And it's still somewhat unclear in my mind whether it's an economic hardship for the appellant or for the renters, one of which might be the appellant in the future. Okay, any other questions at this point for the appellant?
And also, one thing to keep in mind, that you're right about that, but it's also cost effectiveness. In order for the REACH code to be legal, it must be cost effective. And without having solar, it's not cost effective, both for me, the renters, building cost, and it's under the old code, and I'm in the old code, and
Yeah,
that's-
I think we all agree, on the difference in operating costs. I'm not sure we all agree on the difference in building cost. But the state law says you don't have to put in solar, correct? Because
Yes.
you have less than 100% sun.
yeah, I have
Less than
nothing. It's
80%
not gonna
sun or
even-
something.
It's not even gonna pay for the solar panels. I mean, over time. So it won't, if I had solar put on the house, it's not really even gonna pay off the
Pays
solar.
off less than if you had full sun, for sure, even if you
Oh,
had
yeah,
80% sun.
Well, if I had full sun, I'd have no argument at all. It would be
Sure.
nothing.
Yeah.
It would be nothing. I mean, put yourself in my shoes. I mean, if everybody has, if I had solar access, then I'd be probably happy.
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
No, we wouldn't, because you get a lot of benefits from solar that I do not get. And this is only like one. It's not like a whole bunch of other people are gonna be behind me lining up for exemptions and stuff. This is a one unique thing that I'm applying for.
Yeah.
And I really feel that I just wish you guys would understand. And I think you do understand. I just don't know if,
Yeah, yeah, we're dealing with
Politically, I don't know if you
precise
understand.
terms here, that's all.
Politically, I don't know if you understand.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, before we go on, one of these speaker cards is for public comment. That's what it says. And we're past that right now. Maybe we'll take that up later,
Probably after this item.
yeah, or maybe in between the two cases or something, I don't know. Okay,
Any chance I can make a short public comment? I can't stay, but I would love to. I know I didn't get here late enough to.
full body of the commission.
anybody object to a short public comment?
No.
Come forward then, sir.
Thank you.
And we'll take a break in item number 2 until you're finished.
Thank you for being flexible there. I just wanted to make sure I'm correct on my date. Thanks for hearing me and for serving the community. This is in regards to a permit for an event, actually a series of events, markets at the old Caro's Beacon parking lot. The first one would be October 21st. A lady named Lisa Rosas acquired a permit from the city for a series of markets, like vendor markets, local artists, and
These are temporary use permits, or what are we talking about? Okay.
yes, so she did one before with the misunderstanding, like a month and a half ago or two, with the misunderstanding that the owner at the property already had appropriate permitting for such an event, and was notified that he didn't, and so that she needed to apply for a permit. She since, I believe, has acquired the permit, paid the $450. But in that application, she asked, in describing her event, there would be live music at the event. I run an organization in town called Greater Goods, nonprofit community art space, and we sometimes get hired, like by the Ojai Farmers Market. We run the music every week, set up who's going to play. I'm in touch with a lot of local musicians as a musician myself. And the organization is dedicated to mainly to accessible community arts. Everything's by donation and all ages. And that was with the intention, as my sister and I saw the city of Ojai kind of changing from how it was when we grew up to being more exclusive and high-end. We wanted to create something that was different than that. So that's the context of my work and why I got hired by this woman to be part of her market and bring local artists in to share music as local vendors are selling their wares. No police showed up at the event we've had. I've probably done, outdoor, I've done 75 or 80, and if you include the market each week, hundreds of outdoor live concerts in this town. I'm very aware to what kind of town it is and what works and what doesn't. So I was kind of frustrated and a little let down to hear that live music wouldn't be permitted, even though she purchased and applied for a temporary use permit for these events. We have children, acts, adults, but it's all mellow music. It's not rock and roll bands. She doesn't have a big budget for such things, so it's simple singer-songwriter kind of stuff. It's work for me. It supports my organization. It supports local artists playing music at these events. Also supports the ambiance, which is better for all the other vendors at the thing. It helps Jim and Rob's across the street. It helps Blue next door. Everybody benefits, and I don't see anybody suffering from having that. It's not a big rock concert. So I'm not sure actually if it's more of a city council issue to appeal this decision to not allow the amplified
Sherry?
music, or if it would be
It's okay.
here.
All right, is there a particular request that you are making of the planning commission, or?
Well, I'm not sure if it is a planning commission issue or if it's a city council issue, but my request is that they reconsider the decision to not allow live music at they said that people could busk unamplified, but you only hear that within about 5 or 10 feet, especially when there's traffic on the street on a Saturday. And it's gonna be lower attendance, lower sales for the vendors, not an opportunity for people to really be heard, not an opportunity for my organization to make some money, for me and my family to make some money. I don't see who benefits by it.
What are the hours?
I believe it's, let me double check here. It's an afternoon, but I would have to look real quick. I think it starts at 1 and goes till 6. It might be a little earlier than that, but it's a daytime. I know it's done before 6, so it's a daytime event. October 21st also happens to be Ojai Day, which I know there's rock bands all day and beer garden and stuff. That's down past Signal, though.
You're asking about just this one day, and
Well-
I think you had said earlier that there was a whole series,
Another one
so,
planned in November and in December. My hope is that the city would consider allowing the 21st to have amplified music, potentially send somebody from city staff to come and check it out and observe. My overriding hope is that the city would allow such things to happen and even support and encourage and sometimes sponsor such things to happen, and just enforce the code that already exists. Just like if somebody parks illegally, give them a ticket. If somebody's being too loud, even if they had a permit, if they're being too loud, a neighbor's gonna call. And generally, the police are very friendly whenever they do come. I've only had them come to one event I've done, and I've done literally, if I include the farmer's market, which is every Thursday for 2.5 years now, hundreds of events outside in Ojai, and one time the police came. So I feel very confident that I have a knack for knowing what's appropriate. This is especially mellow because it's singer-songwriters. It's not bass and drums, which is what carries and bothers people generally. So that's my hope, is that they could reconsider whether that's planning commission or if it's better to go on a Tuesday.
Hold up just a moment.
Sorry.
What's the code say? I seem to remember we had a case here on Signal Street where we had to talk about amplified versus not amplified music.
Yeah, so this is a temporary use permit. So as a temporary use permit, we can provide parameters for that in terms of the number of events that take place. Here, the applicant, he's the singer-songwriter, has adopted or asked for 6 months, and it'd be one a month. And then we're reevaluating it at that point. At
Would
that
that-
point, if they want to continue doing it, then it would be a conditional use permit, and it would be coming before this body.
Okay, and there is an absolute limit, a noise limit standard right now in the city,
Absolutely.
and I don't believe it specifies a different noise limit or even, a different noise limit for amplified versus unamplified music.
No, but in this case, we provided a condition that required it to not be amplified as a test case.
Condition of the permit.
Correct. No decisions can be made. This is a public comment.
Yeah.
But certainly it's a
I'm
receive
just
and
trying to
file.
understand what the rules are
Right.
that have been laid out and are being objected
But
to.
he is correct. I mean, that is one of the conditions, is that you can have music, it just can't be amplified. It's the same conversation we've had with some other events that have been close to sensitive uses. So
Can I ask whose discretion that is?
that's my discretion at this point.
Okay, and so is that something to take up with you privately if I'm wanting to?
If you're wanting to meet with
Consider
me and
that?
talk about it, then absolutely.
Okay,
And you can talk to the front counter staff about scheduling
Set up a
a
meeting.
meeting. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
okay. Thank you.
Okay? Thank
But
you,
just
sir.
to clarify, he's not the applicant. The
No,
applicant
I
is
got
somebody
that
different.
from the context of the
So
conversation.
typically, I would meet with the applicant, not the singer-songwriter.
I'm not a singer, I mean, I am a musician,
Sorry,
but I
I
was
don't mean
hired
to-
as a sound guy, but then all of a sudden I'm out 3 jobs, and the people that I had arranged to play are out gigs.
Right. But it would be the applicant that I would be speaking with.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. All right, we're back on the record with item 2, and I have a card for Bill Miley.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Miley. As I see this, it's all about the trees. The applicant has a burden that he's willing to carry, which are the trees. He could cut down the trees.
Sherry, are we running the lights now?
He could sell a lot and buy a lot without trees. But the question is, what is the differential between solar and electric cost, no solar and electric cost, gas and electric cost, both for the operation and for the building and for the operation forever. It doesn't matter whether it's an increased cost to a renter or the owner, it's who pays the bill. Because of the trees and no solar, costs of an all-electric will be more and a cost burden. Ojai has a very high value on trees. It seems to me that saving the trees is one key reason for considering an exemption for this property. Saving the trees creates a cost burden now and forever, but it's a value we all believe in. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else here present wish to speak on this topic?
Why not?
Of course.
He stole my thunder. Sorry. Yeah, it's unsigned.
And let's, oh, yeah.
But Bill is right. I mean, we're all
Okay,
about.
Let's
Sorry,
start
Larry
fresh
Stein,
here.
okay,
Let's start fresh with a
Let-
new green light. Larry Steingold.
Larry Steingold. We're all about the trees, and the trees are important. I've got 2 oak trees on my property that cut my solar, so we don't have solar, right? Even though they can put arrays all over the roof. What would be the cost for him to remove the trees? Because I believe he has the right to do that and replace them somewhere else, is that correct? So if he was, I'm assuming that, but let's assume he could. If he's gonna spend $5,000 to move the trees and replace them, then he can have solar. Then this is a moot point, right? Because now everybody's happy. Solar is fixed, the tenants are fixed, everybody's happy. And 900 feet for $161 may be fine. An 1,800-foot house is not gonna be $161 in electric. Not with central air, not with electric heat, not with electric stoves, and all that stuff. So, and unless he's gonna be the primary owner, it's an investment, right? And it's the burden of the tenant. If he was gonna move in, okay, it's a burden on him, that's more applicable. But on the tenant, we're just making the joint more expensive. So now we're gonna need more, you need a higher valued client to rent the space. So we're just making everything more expensive. So somebody who had solar array and all electric in a house next door that had solar is going to be paying $1.50, $200 less per month because of these guys have trees and don't have solar. So if you grant him the exemption, at least he's got a shot, but see what it would cost to move the trees. Because that's the alternative, if that's possible. I don't know what the law, I mean, some of the laws I've read are very
We
confusing.
don't know what kind of trees they are. at
I
the
assume
moment.
they're oak.
No, they're elms.
Fine, what's it cost to move them? Replace them, buy, build.
You can't do
Now, let's,
But you know what I'm saying? I don't want to start, but I'm just saying. But the alternative is, there's a burden on the tenant to pay more. That's the problem here. Because he can't have solar, it doesn't generate enough electricity. So the tenants will be paying more.
yeah,
Okay, so that's the burden on.
we all
us.
agree on that number.
Right, and if he was the primary owner, he'd be paying all that too. So either way, it's a burden on the tenant and the owner, but in this case, it's
Burden
because
on
of-
whoever lives in the place, yes.
Correct, it's one of those exemptions that, listen, it's because of the trees. If the trees weren't there, we wouldn't be here. Well, we want to save the trees, you've got to give him the exemption because he wants to build, and we need housing. So it's like, what do you want to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Question for
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Lucas. It doesn't, I was looking at the solar array plan, he can still have solar.
Thank you, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
Doesn't
It's
exclude
not as
solar at all.
effective.
right, so new houses are required to have solar. However, in this case, he's Solar City or whatever the solar company is that he used, found that there is an exemption that doesn't require him to have solar.
Right.
Can he still have solar?
Sure.
Absolutely.
It's just not gonna be.
It's not gonna produce as much
It's
electricity.
not going to be as efficient and probably requires, there hasn't been any studies that I've seen done to show how many panels will be required.
Yep.
I'm sorry, not required, needed.
All right. Sherry, anybody out there in the ether that wants to speak?
Nope.
All right. Then we're going to close the public
Somebody
comment
just raised their
portion.
hand.
I'm sorry?
Oh, he put his hand back down. Okay, never mind.
Scared them off. Okay. Then we're going to close the public comment portion of this public hearing and come back for deliberations amongst us commissioners. To get a sense of where the commission is on this question, I'll make a motion that we grant the appeal. Period. 4 words. Is there a second to that?
I will second that.
You will, okay.
Now we can debate it, right?
Yes, discussion of the motion.
This is more in the form of an observation
Sure.
about the economics. I think that most renters calculate, and they have a free utility package, calculate that into their economic cost.
Thinking?
Yeah, thinking. And to the extent that the utilities are higher or lower, I think ultimately the landlord winds up bearing the expense, even if the tenant is the one who writes the check to the utility and it gets sent to them, because he can't, there is a threshold, there's a $4,200 renter and there's a $3,200 renter and so on and so forth. And if there's a difference in the cost of utilities, then it's going to, the landlord is not going to be able to charge as much for that unit. And is it a 1-to-1 ratio? I don't know, but it certainly has to be taken into consideration. As I watch
Okay,
members of my family who have rented off and on, they always calculate what the,
I think
you know,
all of us at one time or another rented someone
Yeah.
someplace before we bought.
right, and I think most people calculate the utilities in there and say, what's the total cost per month? And so if the utilities are more
Should.
expensive, the landlord has to lower their price. And
And I think one thing that we need to keep in mind is that nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know if energy costs are gonna come down, if they're gonna go up. There's lots of movement to get them to come down. So, I don't know. Gas costs, we don't know what those are gonna do. We don't know if those are gonna go up or go down. So I almost feel like the monthly maintenance costs, I don't know if we should even consider that. I think we should look at the installation costs.
Maintenance cost?
No, just the.
Oh, you mean
the
operating costs?
Operating costs.
Okay.
Just because we don't know.
Okay.
It's $160 per unit. I know that sounds like, a ton of money, but I think, depending on how these rates go, that could change in a month. You know what I mean? And who knows?
And just as, in my opinion, just as we are, each of us separately speculating as to what is a reasonable rate of return, what does cost-effective mean, what is the effect of $161 a month at whatever the price point is for rental of these two units.
Yeah.
For the smaller unit, it's a bigger burden than it is for the bigger unit, but that's,
And
it's
we're-
all qualitative.
Yeah, it's all
at this
quality, and
point.
we're assuming that the figures that we were given are accurate and they could.
Well, I
be,
asked,
they're
I
totally-
asked
they totally could be.
specifically. I-
Yeah, they totally could be.
Because Lucas has been through it, the applicant, or the
Yeah.
appellant, of course, has, and Lucas said that the revised data that we got in April, different from what we had in November, does show 2,500 or 8,000, depending on whose numbers you believe,
That's
for actually building everything.
Installation, yeah.
And everybody seems to agree on $160 or so a month extra utilities cost for each unit. And I asked specifically, are the appliances submitted in attachment E like for like, comparing gas and electric?
Yeah.
So that the same service will be rendered to a renter, whichever fuel is used. And Lucas said, yes, they are equivalent or substantially similar.
Okay.
So I would say the data that we have to go by is what's in the packet.
No, I totally get it. I totally get it. But what is not in the packet is the other alternatives that are out there that can help the applicant lower their costs if they did go all electric. Because it sounds like there's a letter that we have here, there's some options that they list. I think there's other avenues, there's other resources out there. I mean, you could install solar to help offset the cost. Do you have to? No, but you could. It's not gonna be as efficient as,
Longer
if you
payback
had no
period.
trees at all, it wouldn't be as efficient, but you'd still offset your costs a little bit doing that. So I think that's a factor, it's something to consider. So I think there's other options out there to help lower that cost. So I don't know. I think those are things to consider as we think about this.
Judy?
This is a really difficult decision to be making. Ojai needs housing, number one. Obviously, we need to keep the costs down because Ojai has gotten very expensive. And so for the renters that will be coming into these places, we should be cognizant of keeping costs under control. I really like Mr. Miley's point about the trees. We have to protect trees. These are fully grown. Just replacing it with a small tree somewhere else and waiting a few decades is not the same as protecting what we already have. Also, the fact that this falls under the original REACH code with all of its exceptions and exemptions. If it were under the new code, I would be inclined
Enforcing a different set of rules.
yeah, I would be inclined to deny. Also, I see this as a singular situation. The fact that by allowing this, we are not setting a precedent because new people coming in are going to have to go with the clean REACH code. So I am very sympathetic to the hybrid use of gas and electric. I'm hoping that the use of gas would be as minimal as possible. And it sounds like Mr. Chase is contemplating just that. So that's where I'm leaning at the moment, but I am here to be convinced.
Jamie?
I am convinced that we have an existential problem with the consumption of inefficient hydrocarbons in general. Having said that, here is this one little example that falls between the styles and is not precedential as a result. I look at it and think, all right, there are incremental costs of operating. There's an incremental capital costs. The tenacity of this appellant is beyond me. I thought he expressed some passion about cooking on electricity, but which I don't know if I was going to ask everybody if they've tried cooking on induction electricity. I haven't.
I have.
I haven't. But that's not an issue here.
No.
Right.
So there's no sense in manning that. The question I've got is, could we proscribe what appliances could use gas and which could not? Could we amend this to be specific about, you're allowed to use gas for these three uses, which have a very inefficient electric alternative, and accept those which are the most efficient?
No,
What?
no,
Cannot do that?
no, it is a all or nothing situation here.
What, I'm sorry, what is
You're
all or
talking
nothing?
about certain appliances?
Yeah, I thought
No.
that like swimming pools or heaters were.
We are no. What you're doing is you're combining other exceptions and exemptions that exist within that. We're only talking about the very thin piece that he has applied for within a code that no longer exists.
Right.
So
yeah.
borrowing and picking and choosing other ones that could potentially apply is not the case here.
So the appeal is on only one piece of the.
And it can only be on that one
exceptions?
piece, exactly.
And that one piece, again, just for the record, is?
Circumstances exist that make it a hardship or infeasible to meet the requirements of this article.
Okay, and
That's it.
hardship, in this case, we're talking an economic hardship.
That's his argument.
Yeah, okay.
That's all I've got.
Okay. We are all sitting here doing our best to apply the law as we know it. And we are dealing with squishy language, both in the state law and in the code. And that troubles me. And I find it difficult to say, nobody cares, go do it all electric. And I find it difficult to say, one could argue either side of the economic hardship. Is it a little, or is it a lot, or is it insignificant? And that's what I'm struggling with. Because we're strictly talking about an appeal based on economic hardship.
Or
So.
specifically rate of return.
Rate of return, okay.
Reasonable rate of return.
Reasonable rate of return, that's in the state code.
No, that's the exception that he's applying for.
Oh, okay. Okay, the reasonable rate of return, okay. So either the,
So
so
basically
either the renters are paying more for utilities, or the landlord winds up absorbing part of that to be economically competitive.
Yeah, well, I'll restate it. So approval or conditional approval to do work permitted by this article with all electric appliances will not enable the applicant to rent, so applicant, underline, enable the applicant to rent or sell the building at a reasonable rate of return.
Okay. So reasonable rate of return, whatever that means
Right.
to the applicant, appellant, or to each of us, is the squishy language that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and so I personally, I think he'll be able to sell the building at a reasonable rate of return with all electric. I don't think that would be a problem.
That's not, the reasonable, it's not in that. Doesn't have anything to do with it.
This,
Well-
the exception that you're applying for has rent or sell the building at a reasonable rate of return. Is that correct, Lucas? Yeah, okay.
And that's one thing that bothers me, because the April letter said reasonable rate of return is not part of what I'm asking for here.
That's what I mean, that's what it's not.
Okay, so so if you're not asking for that exception, what are you asking for? Are you saying that the code should be, that the ordinance is invalid because it's not legal?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
So then that's something different,
Only
right?
in my case. It's not something different. It was in my very first argument.
But we can't make that decision. We can't say an ordinance is legal or not legal.
No, but it's just
But-
hardship.
well,
But that's
we,
not the
we
exception.
can't, we can't have this conversation in this form.
Sorry.
And I sympathize, I completely sympathize. The exemption or exception, Lucas, is under 9-1-1009-B4? Is that what this language is?
Pursuant section 9-1-1009 of the municipal code.
Yeah, but 1009 has a bunch of subparagraphs under it. That's what I was trying to clarify with staff. What is the specific
the
basis for the appeal?
Yeah, this is in the ordinance. This is the exceptions in the ordinance.
And
they're right
yeah,
here.
9-1-1009 has a bunch of stuff in it.
Yeah.
So which part is it? This is page
This is page 6 of 7.
6 in the staff report.
Yeah, in the staff report.
Okay.
I apologize. I'm pointing to paper and no one else is on the same page. That's right here.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
this is the one right here.
Well, this list here has to do with infeasible.
Yeah, that's the exceptions that are listed
Right.
in the ordinance, the section 9-101-009.
Okay, so again, my question is, on what is the basis for the appeal?
We're talking
What
about,
is the specific?
again, I'll read it again.
Very good.
Circumstances exist that make it a hardship or infeasible to meet the requirements of this article, period. That's it. That's what
Okay.
that's his basis,
That is, it is infeasible to meet the requirements of this article.
right, which is the reason, which probably is partially the reason why this body has provided an opportunity to have a second bite at the apple. The first bite was, it's infeasible because I can't do solar, or I'm not required to do solar.
Not required is different.
And then the
I
second
agree.
piece was the appliances that the appellant has provided are at a point where it is a hardship or it is infeasible based on cost.
Okay, and which part of the code is this 9-1-1009-B4?
I don't see the code section here. I just know that that's the quotation that we put down, which is circumstances exist that make it a hardship or unfeasible to meet the requirements of this article.
Okay. Okay,
Period.
whichever subparagraph of 9-1-1009 that is. And so,
Okay, so then hardship does apply.
it's a hardship, it's an economic
It's-
hardship.
It's part of
in
the, I think, realistically, it's part of the struggle I think this commission has had, as well as the appellant, in terms of making the fair argument.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
so, final thoughts?
No.
I'd like to get a vote on this, Sherry, and I'd like to vote last because I'd like to see what the rest of the commission is really thinking.
Sharon's prerogative.
She always calls me first,
Trent,
and when it's the city council, the mayor always comes last.
Not good.
Trent,
Okay, I'll go first. To be honest, I was waffling on this one, because I'm trying to stick to what is outlined in the ordinance, the spirit of the ordinance. However, what Judy had mentioned kind of reminded me of something, that this is based on, the old code, and this does not set a precedence, because going forward, new applicants will have to abide by the new code.
Nobody can make this argument ever again
Right.
unless the code changes.
Correct. Then, understanding that their hardship, I underlined hardship, and what that actually means. And I think a hardship is, is it gonna be harder to do versus easier to do? I think in this case, installing with a cost between $2,500 and $8,000, that's a little harder to do, economically, right? $166 a month for a renter is a little harder to pay. Whether that gets passed along to the owner, I don't know. But that could be considered a hardship for the renter. So I'm almost inclined to vote for the appeal.
Okay, something just occurred to me here. We've been throwing numbers around, and with the commission's indulgence, I'd like to ask the appellant one more question.
Sure.
The 2,500 or 8,000, whichever number you choose to believe at this point, about the cost of putting all this stuff in, does that take into account also, if the gas alternatives, does that take into account the gas infrastructure in these two buildings?
Yes.
Because the
that's
2,500 appears to me to be just the difference in acquisition cost of the appliances.
Right, no, it does not include that, but,
Do you have a feel for?
well, the gas
I mean, it's
company's
easy,
gonna-
it's easy to say that it's cheaper to build an all-electric house because you don't have to put any gas piping in it.
right.
That's separate from the cost of the appliances, it's separate from the cost of operating the appliances of
But it's
use.
about the same, because you still have to run, like 30 amps to the water heater. You have to have a little bigger water meter. Water meter. You got to run 30 amps to the
Have a bigger
electric dryer.
electric
It's all the
panel.
same. The gas company runs the line for free to your house, because they get paid back in the long run. So
You just have to put
that's
gas
about
piping
apples to
inside
apples.
the house.
Yeah, and it's, the enclosure on the outside, I will have to build that, and that's $5,500 at least to build that, frame, stucco. It's gotta be in an enclosed area, so it is more closer to the 8,000, and I think it's even more than that. I had to use conservative numbers because I knew that they would be vetting them, and the first one I used, they came back, it was not the same, So I had to start, and I had to learn everything. I had to learn how to convert, all the watts to money, and everything
Sure.
on the bill, and
Okay,
studied everything.
Just asking about the gas piping.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's about apples to apples, because you still have to run electricity, and I plan on running electricity to every. And back to your point about, can you require certain appliances beyond certain things? I'm going to do the best thing I can. I'm going to do the most economical thing I can. I'm going to run all electric AC units. Like I said, I only want it for the things that are important to me, like the water heaters. That's very important. A water heater, to have, a little unit on the outside rather than this gigantic new dinosaurs that they're just coming out with. You guys are going to hear a lot more about these. And,
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So we have a lien.
Bennett?
Are you leaning?
I didn't know, is this a vote or is this a,
I asked,
Discussion.
I think it's still, I'm trying to get a sense of the feel of the commission, but I did ask for a vote.
Yeah, well, I too have waffled on this one, coming down on each side over the study of this document and its progress through the process. At the moment, I'm leaning towards the appellant because it is non-precedential. And the other reason is that asking him to do this, you can say he got caught in time. If he had gotten caught on the other side of time, there's no question on either way. If he was under the current code that was approved by the city council, there would be one answer. And
if it had been before the original REACH code, it would have been a different answer.
Yeah, so
Yep.
so this is sort of a caught in time with some really bad language. I agree with you. Very imprecise. To say that somebody is disadvantaged economically as a result of the numbers that get pushed here, speaks for itself. We've looked at those, examined those. It doesn't ask the applicant, I'll use the word applicant, to be made destitute as a result of it. It's just it just says, yeah.
It's all degrees of
Right, so-
destitution. I
Well,
think we can agree on that.
I don't think it's destitution, though. It just is, does it make sense? I mean, and the answer is, well, it makes more sense to do it the way the applicant would prefer to do it than it does the way in which the staff would like to have him do it. And at least that's my read of it. So that's where I am right now.
So is that a yes vote to grant the
It's a
appeal?
yes. No, that's a
are we-
vote to uphold
Murphy?
the appeal.
Well, it's just
Are we
a
voting?
leaning, like
Okay.
my
Are we
colleague
voting?
here.
Well, let's all vote then.
Murphy,
Now, let's, before we
Before
say
we do
yes or
that.
no,
The motion again.
what does, the motion was
grant the appeal.
grant the appeal.
Right.
Period.
Right.
So,
I came here tonight expecting to deny the appeal, but after listening to all of the debate, I am now voting for the applicant, appellant.
John?
Yeah, I honestly, I'm the same. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Quillisi?
Yes, I concur.
For comity on the commission, and because I'm still disturbed by the imprecision of the language, I will vote yes to uphold the appeal. So 4-0. And I want to congratulate staff on working as hard as they have on this case and doing their best to apply the rules as they see them, which we all, I think, agree are very imprecise.
Agreed.
Okay,
100%.
We all worked hard. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Go forth and
We're good.
talk to Lucas or somebody about permits now.
Okay, look, thanks. All good. See you guys.
Okay.
All right, shall we go on to item 3?
Yes.
This is an update on the housing element,
Yes.
and it's 19 programs.
It is 19 programs. And so this body has seen these 19 programs. However, this body saw these 19 programs as proposed programs because we were still working through HCDs, kind of squishy, wishy-washy. Yeah, you're getting
approval of the
close.
program.
There's still some things that you need to do. We now have the 19 programs. So we have marching orders that we've provided to get us to where HCD and the state are going to be happy with the things that we're going to be doing, some of the tasks that we've been afforded the opportunity to work on. I think really what I want to do is point our attention to attachment A, which is the Excel sheet. And in that Excel sheet, this is an item that this body has seen before. I haven't changed the color coding on it, but what I did add was an action order at the end of the Excel sheet on the very right-hand side. And on that, it has 4 different statements. One is ongoing, and then there's 3 different numbers, 1, 2, and 3. So in there, ongoing is quite
Already
simply,
been working on it.
they're going to be worked on. They're either things that we've done, things that we're going to be doing, or things that we're monitoring. That's really kind of the simplest way to identifying the ongoing piece. 1 is really the first. These are really staff seeing these as the first items that really need to be addressed, and some of them actually are being addressed currently. Some of them research has started, and 1 or 2 of them are basically in the waiting room to start working. And we're looking at those within the next, I like to look at near term, midterm, long term in terms of how we're looking at tackling
Over the
these.
8-year period,
Over the,
2 of which is
well,
already gone.
yeah, we've already flushed 2 years down. And to be fair, we all know the methodology will start 2 years before this is done. So we've really only got maybe 4 years before HCD starts saying, okay, let's start looking at some new stuff. Some fresh stuff, or we'll carry these over for the following reasons. So I'm looking at number 1 being kind of within that first 18 months, really kind of starting from July or August when we received approval from HCD. 2 is really kind of in the 2 to 3 year range, and then 3s are before the end of the 6 cycle. That's the way I'm seeing these play out. They all can't be in at the same time. It'd be too much of a log jam. We all know how that goes with this body in terms of current planning projects that we've had in the past. But have overcome them. So this will be the same thing. We'll systematically go through each of these. If you want tonight, we can go through the 1s, 2s, and 3s and talk about the ongoing. I kind of leave it up to the commission here tonight, only because staff wrote these, you've reviewed these, council's approved them, and now HCD has certified them. So moving forward, these are really kind of our marching orders in terms of how we're going to be addressing several different styles of housing in terms of getting the word out, in terms of code pieces that'll be either written or revised, and then getting the word out to the community in terms of options and opportunities. So I'm assuming that everybody has read this thoroughly and know it back and forwards just like the previous item.
I do want to thank you.
Absolutely.
I see that on our future agenda items, you are leaving this in each meeting now, and I think that's
the
an
idea
excellent
is,
idea.
yeah, like our work program, this is something I think this isn't meant, look, I don't think we need to be here until 11 o'clock talking about it and going through each item, but I do think that this body needs to be aware and accountable because some of these items are going to be coming before this body.
Right.
Question, Lucas, on page 2 of 3, the first item in the green does not have a number.
Yes, it's ongoing. I know, I saw that. I already
Okay.
hand wrote it in, so it's ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good catch. Let me,
How about if
if
we
we
do it
could-
this way? There are 19 programs. Maybe we talk in a little more depth about 3 to 5 of them in a meeting. Then we'll come back the next meeting and talk the next 3 to 5. And actually dig in a little bit so that we understand them.
yeah, if we do that, I would prefer that we stick with the number 1s.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
And a combination of the number 1s and the ongoing, because the ongoing is stuff that either,
Yeah,
Community development
programs
staff
1
is
through
typically
3,
working
for
through.
example, are all ongoing.
right.
Yeah.
The 2s and 3s are more than likely the advanced planner that's going to be coming on board will be handling most of the bulk of that. In the beginning here, the 1s, it's likely, well, some of them I've already basically done or my staff has done as well, so. we're currently working on.
Okay, so,
I have a question on, and maybe you can help clarify for me. Do we have, and I'm sure it's in here, I'm sure it's somewhere in here, collaboration with Ojai Unified School?
In terms of the housing element,
Yeah.
mm,
Like availability of affordable housing? Like provide-
Workforce housing?
Well,
part of
right
the
here.
workforce
school-
housing
part
would
of
probably be a
school-
general term, but I don't know that it necessarily has us working directly with school officials.
Well, right here,
specifically.
provide a continuing supply of affordable housing to meet the needs of existing and future Ojai residents in all income categories. Facilitate affordable housing development. It's on number, it's attachment A 2 or 3. That would apply, I'm assuming.
In a broad sense, yes.
Okay,
But in terms of calling it out specifically, no.
right,
But in terms of workforce housing, yes.
okay, cool, all right. Perfect.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that, and I don't know if we should list it or if whatever, but I don't know if that can be
Just-
part.
I
To
would
be fair,
hesitate
these-
to change anything
These,
that's in the
yeah, these
table.
pieces aren't being changed. It's a matter of just reviewing,
Yes.
reviewing and then looking at processing and then obviously getting feedback as we move forward
Right.
on some of these items.
Okay.
Well, obviously, all these items eventually.
And I don't want to get into the details of each of these until we've had public comment.
Right.
We
Oh,
do have
yes,
one.
we do have public comment.
But I want us to I would like to have us, during deliberations, start to deal with ongoing and priority one programs. So,
Certainly.
okay. Are there any other clarification questions for staff before we hear public comment? All right,
Sorry,
sorry.
I do have one more
Great.
clarification question.
that we need.
In our housing element, it does, we don't specifically call out how many units Ojai needs, correct?
We have been allocated a number,
Correct.
and we all know
have
what that
been-
number is, right?
We have been
It's a target.
allocated or given guidance to what that should be, but we haven't come up with our own figure, is that correct?
Not specifically.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
It's not a. Remember this. The housing element isn't meant to solve. It's meant to guide.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So it provides guidance in terms of the 53. Go out and find where those 53 get situated.
Yes.
Right.
that
And you
50
tend to over exaggerate the 53 because there's always the chance that 53 number, which in this case I think we ended up doing almost double that.
Right.
There's an anticipation that those sites may come offline.
Right.
So then we lose those numbers for those sites if they end up getting developed.
I guess my point of clarity is the 53 number, we didn't come up with that number.
That number was
Came
through
from-
the
That came from SCAG.
SCAG and working with HCD,
it
because
used to
SCAG
be
obviously works with
hundreds.
HCD.
Yeah,
It
It was
used to
350 in the last cycle,
371,
371.
yeah. The numbers are very vivid to me.
The other thing to remember is this table is just a piece of the housing element.
Correct.
And the 53 number appears
Yes.
in the housing element, but not in this table.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And the reason for this body reviewing, having the discussion, and certainly being at the table is because several of these items are going to be coming before this body as a recommendation or feedback, one or the other. So
And
kind of makes sense that you're aware of it.
I'm looking also to staff to tell us what tasks we as a body or as individual commissioners should be helping with, wherever that appears, because that's why we're here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Do
Very good.
we not have a housing subcommittee?
We do.
We do.
We do.
That's what I thought.
All right, so in subsequent meetings, we'll have even more clarification of things that the housing subcommittee and then the commission as a whole will be taking on as work requirements.
Right.
Yeah, okay, very good. Then we'll hear from the public. Bill Miley?
So instead of reading what I wrote in pen, I'm using the digital form today
All right.
because I forgot to print it. Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Miley. I am aware of the 19 program projects in the approved housing element. I like the color grouping as it makes it easier to coordinate, and also the calendar ranking, which is very important for getting things done and measuring their accomplishment. I do have a larger question, and that is working to meet the need as expressed in the housing element. It's huge. If we use the data in the housing document as reliable and justifiable in today's value system, the need is huge. I do want to ask about the housing document section, which details the existing need for affordable housing. The assigned regional housing number allocation, the RENA number, does not reflect the embedded need for deeded affordable housing within our current city population. As a reminder below, I put in the email to you folks a key chart from the housing document, page 10, which detailed the rental burden faced by our residents who rent their houses. I wish the Commission would address this chart and several others and the message it implies. I know addressing these large numbers is not on this agenda. I do want to suggest the Commission consider how it will respond to the deeded affordable housing developments tending towards meeting the needs, which will either come soon or eventually to your Commission. Thank you.
Anyone online?
Pardon me?
Is there anyone online?
Yeah, is there anyone online, Sherry, that wishes to speak?
No.
Okay, then we will close the public comment portion of this item and come back to discussions with staff. I, for one, will freely admit, based on the numbers that are in the housing element, that one could argue that more than 53 residences are needed for affordable housing. The question is, what is the city's responsibility? First of all, it's not to build anything. It's no developer's responsibility to build anything. It's the city's responsibility to make it possible for builders to build at least as many units of affordable housing as are required by the state through SCAG. And beyond that, my way of thinking is worthwhile, it's aspirational, but it's not a hard requirement on the city. And so the question is, what's the city's real responsibility here? So could you start with that? We have to do these programs that we promised to do, but what's the effect of doing these programs?
Just as an overarching overview of what the purpose and kind of the prescription with these 19 programs is to reduce barriers. That's really, if you're looking at these 19 programs, you're seeing barriers being addressed, information being provided, right, to the masses, anybody that's interested. And really, it is focused on affordable housing in a bunch of different areas. Whether that information is through our website, whether that information is being disseminated through this body, we have some obligations that we have to do on an annual basis. If we don't do those, and we're not reporting those through our annual,
Annual progress reports, I
yeah, the
think you called
APR,
it.
yeah. Through our annual progress report, it becomes kind of a report card where we could get marked up for, right? So there's things that we've promised to do, and when I say promise, I mean with a capital P. It's not a small p like it was before. Well, we promise we'll look into some of these things. That was some of the issues that we found with HCD, is the squishy language that we were writing into some of these programs no longer could be in there. Oh, we'll look at the possibility of maybe thinking about doing something, maybe. No, you're going to take this through and you're gonna render a decision, right? So instead of kicking the can down the road, we're now looking at near term, midterm, long term, right, within that 8-year period, which is less than that now since we're in 2023. So let's for instance use number 1 as an example. So the number 1 has the program which is adequate sites for RENA and monitoring of no net loss. That task is responsible by the Community Development Department. Develop a procedure to monitor the SPL overlay sites, comprehensive evaluation of the SPL development standards, provide information on available sites and development incentives to interested parties, and that is something that's required to be set up really by the end of this year. So what that basically means is we need to have information on our website. That's the way I'm seeing it, right? Providing information. There may be a need for us to create a section on our website that specifies housing, and it's really kind of a broad perspective of housing. No different than when our general plan update. We've got an entire website dedicated to the general plan update. Everything, it's literally a library of information that's happened over the last, well, since 2019.
At least 3 years, yeah.
Yeah. So the same thing is true here. We have some things, but this is going to require more.
And so this could be along the lines of, okay, the RENA number is 53, but the commitment that the city made to there being adequate space for X number, say it was 100, I don't remember what the number
I
was.
think it was 95, yeah.
95. Then you, Community Development Department, will be monitoring the status of the parcels that constitute that potential 95 housing units.
Yeah, one example of that would be through the APR, the Annual Progress Report. We're already reporting the number of units that have come in. And remember, we get to count ADUs. We're counting tiny homes as well. We've got 2 tiny homes that we've cited so far in total. And obviously we're counting junior ADUs as well. So it's interesting, the junior ADUs when it was first adopted were few and far, and now it seems like they are accompanying ADUs as they come forward. So, and SB 9 as well. I mean, there is opportunities for basically the subdividing of those lots through SB 9.
Yeah, you're talking about SB 9 lot splits. Yeah.
Correct.
Now, do those come through us?
No,
Okay.
no, they cannot come through.
That's
They
a county action to do a lot split?
Yes, it is a ministerial action that does not require and cannot go through any sort of discretionary action.
Ah, okay.
So,
And so let's say there was a parcel that was on the SPL list. It has part of the 53-plus potential housing units, and a lot split is done. What happens to the SPL list? Are both pieces still on the SPL list?
I think it depends on the situation. It would completely depend on the situation. If it was developed as housing, then we would account for that housing. If it's underdeveloped, meaning it's got less units than what we accounted for, like for instance, if they only build 10 and we had accounted for the possibility of 20, then we're short 10 units. And when we do our APR and we identify that,
The APR would say, we've built 10, we have 10 new units, but instead of a potential of 95, we now have a potential of 85.
yeah, the inverse to that would be a project comes in that is 10 and it ends up being 20. We assume 10 and it ends up being 20. these are hypotheticals, obviously.
Sure.
I'm not giving specific locations.
But
You
that's
still
what-
report that.
That's what your annual monitoring.
Absolutely, because
is.
And that's just one piece to this puzzle, by the way. But I think it's an important piece. It's the piece that everybody seems to gravitate towards as well. When we're talking about numbers like that, and they come in every year, each progressive year that then gets sent off to HCD and OPR, Office for Planning and Research, and HCD, which is Housing and Community Development. It's basically monitoring at that point. I mean, that data is readily available through HCD's website. So you can access it today in terms of our progress, in terms of what we've
Okay.
done up to this point.
Just for grins, you mentioned JADUs are coming in as part of applications for
Yeah, more
building
more
now,
so than they had
more than
in
they
previous
used to
years.
be. Okay. But also tiny homes count. And
Yes.
and ADUs through the, what do they call it, the amnesty program?
Oh, yeah, compliance.
Um,
The compliance.
second unit compliance program. We are now 2 years into this cycle. How many new housing units do we have, counting all that stuff?
ADUs and new construction is
Yeah,
what
it's
you're
right
talking
here.
about?
Yeah, ADUs, new construction, and, yeah, I didn't find the number, but
I think it's attachment B, page 1616. That's, those are, I don't know.
No,
those are
I don't think I
objectives?
put those numbers in here.
Oh, okay.
I think it's fair to say that if you're asking for those numbers, I
if you
can
were
give
sending
you.
in your APR today, what would you say in terms, and it doesn't have to be exact, but in general terms, do we have, over the past 2 years, have we gotten 10 new housing units of the 53 required? Or of the 53 that we had to provide for? Or do we have 20, or do we have 50, or?
I would say on average, there's probably a little over 20 units.
If
Is
you
what
count ADUs, it's.
we are counting ADUs.
we're counting
So
ADUs.
it's new single-family residence, and the APR breaks it up into 3 different categories: submitted, approved, and built.
Right.
So
Okay.
I think they're doing that on purpose to track each of these through their phases.
Want to make sure that the city
Some are
isn't
submitted, yeah.
digging its heels in.
But
As an
whatever,
example,
yeah.
tiny homes, we've had 4 applications come in, but only 2 have actually been built.
Right.
But when you say approved, you mean approved by this body or approved by the city council, which has its
Approved has 2 different forms, by this body as well as,
city council?
like the example of the previous item. That item came before this body in 2021, at the end of 2021. It had an application, it had an approval, but it doesn't have doesn't have a built date, meaning a final date.
Right.
So
So-
it's still lagging.
Quick question, just to kind of address what Mr. Miley had mentioned here. I'm just looking at your letter, Mr. Miley. To consider how to respond to deeded affordable housing developments, based on the numbers in the chart, and obviously there's a need. But I did want to point out that this is in our plan. It's on page, attachment A, 2 of 3, where it says, provide continual supply of affordable housing to meet the needs of existing and future Ojai residents in all income categories, which would be deed affordable or
Deed restricted.
deed restricted as well, right? 'Cause that would include
Affordable
that.
housing agreement,
Well-
something along those lines, yes. Those tend to be larger projects. You're not going to see a smaller
Right.
project that's going to be deed restricted, unless it's required.
Unless, yeah, you're not going to see somebody building an ADU in their backyard and deed restricting it.
Right, yes.
Right.
But again, that deed restriction would fall under this category, meaning that we're doing what we can as a city to remove the barriers, right?
And some of these programs speak to that.
Yeah.
In terms of going through the process and having the discussion and looking at ways in which to remove specific barriers.
And one of the reasons for my earlier comment was, this says, provide a continuing supply. It doesn't say who provides it. It's the city's plan that somebody provides a continuing supply of affordable housing. But that's a little too squishy for me. It doesn't say the city will, and you get over here,
what we're doing.
then it says make it possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
be flexible and be inclusive and all those things, but The city's not building anything.
We're providing for the opportunity
Provide the
and the
opportunity
path
for.
forward.
Yeah. Okay?
Oh, one thing I would love to see, and I don't know if this is part of the HCD, but can we look at projects that are being proposed or projects that have been proposed or like a pipeline?
You're wanting examples?
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, this is something that's on the table. This has got X number of affordable units. This
I
is on the
think
table. We've got
it's
X number. of
pending
units.
future
Pending.
agenda
Yeah.
items.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
All right.
that's,
And I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, that's
because
hard to
The
do.
difficult
Because what you
part,
need to do is say, all right, you know, I can see 20 potential projects floating out there, and then you have to assign a probability of it actually making through, and you can't publish that, your assessment on the probability of project A versus project D.
It's a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
Why even write it down?
yeah, I think the bigger problem with it, and I think Thais will agree with me, is that unless it's on the agenda,
Yeah.
Yep.
it becomes very squishy, and we've gotten in trouble in the past on Brown Act stuff, so.
Well,
But if there is an opportunity where things have been posted on our website, then I can easily turn this body to that piece of information and say, look here for the following reasons. And I think that's something that can be posted, and I won't get in trouble with it for it, and neither will this body.
well, and as we're saying, these things change over time. I see 1440 Daily Road in here. This is not the first time that somebody has come before this body, an earlier version of this body, to build something at 1440 Daily Road.
Right.
We've had, I can remember in my 7+ years on the commission, I think I have seen 3 plans for the old bowling alley property.
Yep.
And none of them have gotten to the point of asking for a permit in sufficient detail that staff is ready to ask us to make a decision.
Yep.
So that's gonna go on.
Some of these projects are secular, unfortunately.
And you know what 1440 is, I don't. What is that?
We can, let's
Yeah.
let's
We'll-
focus on
we'll
the
talk
housing, and we'll
offline.
talk
I'll
future
tell you about
items, and I can give some background, but
Yeah.
Thais is gonna stop me at some point.
She'll stop all of us doing the job. I'm just making the point that
Yeah.
the fact that something is on the future agenda items list doesn't mean it's the first time we've ever seen it, doesn't mean it's even the third time, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll ever see it.
Yeah, I mean, the good example, and it's something that's in one of these programs, is the pilot program for tiny homes. That just recently went to city council and as just kind of an update, and we're looking.
That was 2 a year, up to 10 total or something, wasn't it?
Right, so we've basically had 1 a year cited, essentially, where they've gone through the entire process, and we have 2 in the city now. That's 10% a year, right, if you're doing the math at home. And so the question is how can we remove barriers? That was the question that council asked. So we're going back and we're taking a look at removing some of those barriers that have really afforded 2 of the applicants specifically to say no because of the red tape that was required. So we're taking a closer look at that and looking at the permanency of tiny homes, which is encouraging.
The other thing I think that we need to consider, a major part of providing the opportunity, because that's what this is about.
Which, by the way, the tiny home, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The tiny home piece comes before this body because it's a zoning, it's part of our zoning ordinance. So Title 10. So it'll be coming before this as a recommendation, just like tiny homes did, in 2018, I think?
Somewhere around
It was before my time, but I remember reading the records on it, so.
I've been here since 16, yeah.
Right.
So at the rate we're going, at 10 homes, 10 plus residences a year, counting all categories. You said there were 20-some so far this cycle, then we will, in 5 years roughly, have met the RENA requirement, independent of the need. If you define the need as anyone who pays more than 30% of their gross income for housing, that's a need for another residential unit. But this also talked about monitoring the construction and, what was it, monitoring of no net loss.
Yeah.
Could you explain that?
Anytime a project comes forward, I can think of a couple of examples that I'm not going to mention specifically
Sure.
for obvious reasons. But if a project comes forward and it already has units on site, and on site it's been identified that those units are affordable, whether they're deed restricted or not, if you're removing those units, you've got to replace those units as a reasonable rate or pay for those units. That's the way in which our code reads currently.
And the key there is deeded or not. If the rent is low enough that it qualifies as affordable to some extent, regardless of the condition of the property,
Correct.
and you take it down, then you've got to replace it with something, again, that's affordable, deeded or not, I think.
Correct. Right.
Okay, so.
We've
so
seen examples of,
Replacement could be affordable, but still not deeded affordable. Is that right?
correct.
Okay.
So the other example that, since we were on accessory dwelling units, program 4 speaks to increase the supply of accessory dwelling units.
Yep.
So while we get to count those towards RENA, here we're putting ourselves into a goal of 120 ADUs, junior ADUs, legalized units within the 8-year mark. And we're going to be monitoring that. Obviously, when we submit our annual progress report, we'll be looking at whether or not we're going to be hitting that goal within this cycle.
So we've set ourselves a goal twice the RENA number, plus.
For ADUs. Look, we get to
Oh,
count.
Oh, that's right.
It's
just
only
for
ADUs. We get to count ADUs towards ARENA, but not towards the low, very low, the other categories. They are a market rate count.
Could you look at page 16 of 16 and explain that chart a little?
I was a little confused on that, too.
I understand.
Are we talking about table 4-1?
Yes.
Okay.
I understand the RENA numbers, and in terms of the upper income, I mean, if somebody just builds a great house, that counts toward this. It doesn't have to be affordable, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the ADUs at 120 is just our goal. And does that, but they do count toward the RENA as well?
They do. Here's the way in which this chart functions. It's kind of a snapshot into what could be. So it's kind of looking into the future. For ADUs to go extremely low or very low, it's going to require them to be deed restricted. Now, at some point, there could be an opportunity for them to be deed restricted, but the reality is that they're not required. We can't require deed restricted ADUs. That ship sailed, I want to say, in 2019 when we did code revisions.
And if you don't know what the rent on that ADU is, you don't know what category it falls into anyway.
Right. So previous ways in which we were able to send off ADUs to get authorization or approved through HCD is that we would reach out to the homeowners and we would ask them, what are you going to use this ADU for? If it was deed restricted, and that's when it was deed restricted, they'd say, I've got my parents living there. Well, what are you going to charge? They're going to stay there rent free. So then we locked in that they were extreme. It basically went extremely low immediately. And HCD was accepting it at the time. That was then, because they're already being deed restricted. Now we can't require the deed restriction. It's something where you can, but I can tell you right now, 99% of the people that are coming in for ADUs are not even considering deed restricted.
And they're not revealing to the city, arguably it's none of the city's business, but
Yeah, it's not required.
they're not telling the city what the anticipated rental is on a new built ADU.
Yeah, we ask, but there's no obligation to reveal.
So we have no idea if it's gonna be market rate or upper or moderate or low or very low or extremely low, because that requires the owner telling us what the rent's gonna be, and unless they sign a deed restriction, the rent could change from year to year. So how does, I'm trying to figure out how the city
Is gonna know.
not meets 53, but how it meets this mix of 53.
So how do ADUs qualify? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, how, because the 53 is made up of 4 different numbers here,
Right.
and how does the city, through your APRs or whatever, ever have the data to tell HCD, this is what we have done? All you can say is, there are this many new housing units. And you can't say anything else unless the owner of an individual housing unit signs up for a deed restriction, right?
Well, there was a recent development agreement that did spell it out. And
Right, unless somebody
if
signs up
something
for a
like
deed
that goes
restriction,
forward,
then you don't know.
we're good.
Yeah, it's no different than throwing out a number, and our number was 53, to say, hey, are you going to build? We anticipate in the next 8 years you're going to build or provide the opportunity for 53 units. No different than our 371 that we had for the 5th cycle. Probably built, if we're counting ADUs, maybe half that, probably less than that. I was looking at the last iteration, and I think it was less than half of the 371, which is one of the reasons why HCD was so
Less
on
than half of
point.
371 was actually formally added to the housing stock?
Yeah,
Okay,
pretty much all in ADUs.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard some wild numbers about estimates of how many unpermitted ADUs there are in town.
Yeah, that'd be a good.
No
figure
way
to
of,
get.
No way of knowing unless we start poking around
I mean, one of the
backyards.
interesting facts about, the way in which the 19 programs are laid out is we have a bunch of different options for ADUs. We don't just have build a brand new ADU. We have build a brand new ADU, do a tiny home, that counts. You already have a unit that's on site. When was it done? Maybe it's a compliance program unit, right? There's not a lot of cities that do that, to be fair. And we definitely drove that home when we were talking to HCD. And I think that's a testament to recognizing that 120 is a realistic number. I think these numbers that we put in here in terms of the scale going from extremely low all the way up to upper, which is market rate basically. The reality is that if we're moving into this direction, it's going to require careful consideration and very specific types of projects that fit within that mold. There are projects that have gone before this body and city council that fit that mold, but it's not guaranteed.
Mhm.
We provide for that opportunity.
And some of them
and
even
then-
go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Opportunity or process.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious about, you've got rehabilitation, that's conversion of an existing structure? Or is that just updating of an existing structure?
Sorry,
I'm
where are we
looking
at?
at this table 4.1 again.
Oh.
It has the category of ADUs, new construction, which could be, the ADUs is either new construction or conversion.
Yeah, I would say rehabilitation and
New construction is presumably single-family residences then? Or
Yeah,
maybe
because
that
of the-
plus JADUs?
Because of how low those numbers are, I would assume that's either that would not be an ADU, because junior ADUs and ADUs fit into that same category of ADUs.
Yeah.
New construction would be new
New
single
primary
family.
residences,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could also be,
and 2 a year is about right.
well, it could also be multifamily as well in that category, because it's so broad.
Oh, okay.
It's so broad. The same thing is true with rehabilitation. If the units went offline and then came back on, compliance program is one that comes to mind. It could fit within that category as well.
Okay, okay.
So
Explain that, do that one again.
What's the-
The
rehabilitation.
rehabilitation one.
What's the
A lot of
conservation
times-
line?
Well, it's zero. So there's no.
No,
I don't have the. It's not earmarked here, so I'm not sure what that means specifically.
Affordable units? I don't know.
Yeah,
that rehabilitation is one line and conservation is another.
I'm not sure why even we put that in there. To be
Maybe
fair.
those are HCD requirements that you list them all. I don't know.
So in terms of rehabilitation, just to get back to that, I mean, we're talking about compliance units. So units where we've already got a standard set procedure and process in place. Individuals come to us at the table. We go through a process, and then those units become safe for residents to continue living in.
Okay,
rehabilitate
you've
them
legalized.
From
non-
illegal to legal non-conforming.
Yeah, there you go, legal nonconforming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is conservation adaptive reuse maybe? Whereas rehabilitation is keeping the use up, making a,
Oh, so like an office building being converted and that's been underutilized or dilapidated, and then converting that into residential.
Could be.
Could be one. There's probably a number of different examples that are unique. I mean, Ojai is unique, so.
Okay, so
If you could just, while we're talking about that rehab thing, page 13 of 16, attachment B, retention of affordable units. In about the middle of that, it says, continue the city's housing rehabilitation program, but target assistance to address code enforcement issues with the goal of rehabilitating 16 units over the planning period. That, I thought, meant, some house is falling down and that the city would help get it.
No, there's other
Rehabbed?
examples. I can't specify the code compliance because I know we have ongoing code compliance situations. One that comes to mind, but I'm not going to identify the address, is the Rat House. I think we all remember that one. I'm not going to say where it's at, but that one literally had to be completely rehabilitated because it had gone off the market. It was no longer habitable, as an example.
Who
There's-
does that? Is that something that the city is doing or just making it possible for a private owner to do?
Yeah, it becomes a health and safety issue. Is probably the best way to put that, which falls squarely into the lap of code compliance.
Okay.
Yeah, the city can red tag an existing home. And
Yeah.
then if it's brought back up to code,
Then it's back online.
Rehabilitated.
Yeah, it's
But
rehabilitated.
to rehab 16 units is a lot of units.
There's
Oh, never mind. Okay, I hear you.
we're working through those on a regular
this is
basis.
saying he has a target-rich environment.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay.
but again, no money to spend.
Well,
The investor has to spend it.
right, right. And we don't go out and look for these, by the way. These are driven by complaints that we receive.
Yeah.
So.
Well, here we are at 8:25. What's your
I-
capacity for more discussion?
You know what would be I think helpful maybe for the group is that we focus maybe on 4 for the next meeting.
Yeah. I think that's a
Okay.
good call. And we
Yeah.
focus on the ongoing or the,
Ongoings or ones.
Yeah, I'm okay with either one.
well, let's focus on the ongoing since those are,
All right,
we should be
Yeah.
doing them now.
All right,
ongoing.
They're ongoing.
thank you, thank you.
I'm gonna take the,
Even reading the housing element doesn't get the level of understanding that I feel comfortable with without having you talk about all this stuff. So
Wow.
thank you.
I've lived it several times over. It's like Groundhog Day at one point. But I'm glad that we've gotten to the point we're at now.
Well, we got a plan.
I'm gonna take the housing section out of my book.
That's a good
And
call.
give the
Amen.
book back to Sherry, but that way you don't have to reprint the housing section.
Oh, just a really quick silly observation. Attachment C, page 1 of 2, the letter from the HCD. So we qualify for federal, state, and regional funding programs because we met because we hit our element,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, they always hold that over our head.
Little carrot,
Yeah, it's the proverbial carrot, right? That's really what we're looking at.
gotcha.
And they make no qualms. It's the reason why they put it in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And that in our conversations and meeting with them, they've mentioned that many a time.
Say, hey, you're eligible.
That's the carrot. The stick is not approving the program.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
The reality is that we have, through the general plan, we have grants that we're actively using and have gotten reimbursement for. So
Nice. Awesome. There you go.
Yeah.
Making
I think I have
progress.
kept a copy of this somewhere.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna
I
take
don't
mine
think
out.
this one has changed.
Oh.
Your table here with your colored table hasn't changed,
No.
Oh.
not yet.
I didn't change that. What we'll do is let's just focus on the ongoing. And then
Okay?
I won't do a color coordination with that. It'll just be ongoing through an Excel. Yep.
Okay. Terrific. Let's go on then to item 4, future agenda items. And I am pleased to see that it looks like we'll be talking about this at each of the next 2 meetings, at least in October.
Yeah, there's a couple other items for the 18th that I believe will be ready. So we'll have some
A
current.
couple of the pending items,
Just look here.
or something that's even newer than.
Actually, one of them. I think it's 509 South Ventura. Yeah,
And Libby.
Libby 706
Oh,
Libby. Yes.
706 Libby.
Yeah, those are both single family. Right, convert existing. Yeah, that's what we've been looking at. Okay, good. So those two, we anticipate they'll be ready for the 18th. We think we've got enough information for it to
Terrific.
be complete.
Terrific.
For the 4th, definitely talking about housing element in the program prioritization, focusing on ongoing as identified. And then I'm also looking at another item that's also housing related, but not, it's an educational piece. So looking at trying to organize that right now.
Nice.
So we'll see. I don't have it on here only because I'm waiting to hear back to see if we can get them to come. If that happens, look forward to it, and obviously Steve will have a conversation.
Okay.
By the way, the rest of the items that are on pending, these are all really close. I see that I don't know why the bowling alley site dropped off, but that one is
That
close
was
as well.
1200 block of East Ojai Avenue, I
Yeah,
think.
that
yeah.
one is really close. Really waiting for like one item for us to move
Terrific.
that forward. So
Okay. Any other questions on that?
Nope.
All right. And Lucas told me before the meeting that our city council liaison member is unable to be with us tonight,
yep.
and therefore,
Hold on. I have
well, then we
updates.
have a director's report.
Yeah, I have one thing that I think this full body will appreciate, and you can all pat yourselves on the back, but Title 10, the errata and minor revisions, finally got to sit at the table with City Council, and
Saw that.
they were excited. They commended this body for all your hard work. And I think at least a half a dozen times commended Chair Quillisi.
Yeah, good.
So,
Great,
Yeah, well,
great.
He deserves all the credit.
no.
but the
no.
work's not done, by the way, because I had thrown out 2 other examples of deeper dives, and they said, bring them on. So work
That's good.
moves on. We'll be doing more work.
Played a little bit role in that. not-
To be fair with that one,
Lucas did the heavy lifting on the first 2 of 3 pieces, and Alex De Silva did the heavy lifting on the 3rd piece.
Yep. He took
Yes,
the
I
baton and
kind of-
ran with it.
I found some errata, but each of them found equally amounts. It was just a matter of good collaboration to get 180 to 200 different examples of places where we needed to clean up the language.
So the decks are clear of that now? I mean,
Almost. I found one more.
yeah.
Look, the reality.
Streets should have been sheets, but that's gonna take,
Yeah,
Judy
but,
look
but,
at it.
but for all intents and purposes, it's been, the big backlog has been,
the big backlog is gone, and the questions that remain are they are appropriately classified or classifiable as policy questions,
yeah, so,
as opposed to just errata.
right.
Yeah, and I mean, policy, I mean, they truly are deeper dives into what we'd be looking at.
Right, and there's just a
Inc-
short number of them, it's like 15 maybe.
Inconsistencies
Found
and
so
some
far.
clarity. I mean, items that we've seen before this body have created some confusion, and then have created heartburn on my end, on staff's end, because then we're going back to the drawing board saying, okay, so this code really doesn't provide the necessary direction that we're looking for here. How do we solve this, right? And we've had a couple projects like that,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But it's also shined a light on those areas that we're going to focus on now.
I had someone say to me his favorite phrase in discussing things of this sort is to ask the question, where does it say that? And if you can't find where does it say that, then that's a problem for staff, and it's a problem for the people that come to the front desk. Because either nobody knows or somebody's making something up, and we don't want either of those situations, so. But the rest of it is now primarily, here's what looks like a potential problem in the code. What do we recommend to city council? Do they take Plan A or Plan B to deal with this issue? And those deeper dives, we could take one at a time, for that matter.
I think we probably should. They all merit, as controversial as some of those items have been that have come before this body, it makes sense that we kind of look at it carefully.
They deserve an hour or 2 of discussion, and then a recommendation to city council.
Or a couple meetings,
Or a
to
couple
be
of meetings,
fair.
we've even done that, yes.
think.
I was curious, you talked about an advanced planner.
Yeah.
Is there one in the pipeline, or are we still hoping for one to be in the pipeline?
We've gone through the interviewing process and we're looking for a qualified applicant
Oh,
currently.
great, okay.
And we haven't put any offers in. I think we've refilled the position. Looking at some other options and opportunities. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes you've got to take the reel, throw it back into the lake and see what you get.
You never catch all the fish, but
Yeah.
you hope for one at a time.
Yeah, right.
Yep. So that's where it's at right now. I was hopeful at this meeting I was going to say, hey, X, Y, and Z is going to happen, but I don't have that information, unfortunately.
You're still interviewing, you haven't made an offer to anyone?
No, we're not interviewing anymore.
Oh, you're not interviewing anyone?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's.
We've taken the pole and we've taken the line and we're throwing it back in the water.
Are you
Okay.
Give it another
doing
shot.
that with new parameters on the job, is that?
Yeah. I can't
Or throw the line in a different lake?
Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. Yeah, that piece,
Yeah.
that one.
Okay.
Yeah. That happens sometimes. It all depends on the timing. I've noticed that about how this works sometimes. It's timing. So
Lucas, in your report, did you want to introduce the new city attorney?
Ah.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
So to my left is Thais. Thais, how do you say your last name?
It's Thais Alvis.
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 And Thais, could you just give us 30 seconds on who you are, why Ojai, why now? Sorry, that almost sounds like an interviewing question.
You will be expected.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you will be expected to speak during meetings if we step out of line, not just when we ask questions.
Understood. Yeah, so I've been working at the law firm Colantuno, Highsmith and Watley for about 2 years, a little bit less. And since Epi left us, sadly, Matt needed somebody to step in for some of his planning commission meetings. So since I've been working with Matt on some of his other cities, he asked me to do that. So that's why I'm here. And I'm happy, so happy to be here, so happy to meet you all. Seems like a great community. I love all the public comments. So excited to move forward.
Now, where do you live?
I live all the way down in Irvine.
Oh, wow.
Oh, jeez.
So I'll be
Farther
staying
than
at
Epi.
the hotel tonight.
Good for you.
Yeah.
You would drive all the way down to Pasadena after
Yeah.
these meetings.
Yeah, Irvine's a little further.
It's not all over.
The way I see this it's not a rebuild, it's a reload. So we're excited.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
We expect good things, and I'm sure you'll deliver. Thank you. Is that the end of the director's report?
I've said too much already.
All right, then, seeing no other business before the commission at 8:37, we're adjourned. Thank you all.